What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron. We're doing a little 2-for-1. I want to have my running back tier list, my wide receiver tier list out to you guys before the 12:30 kickoff. So I'm kind of putting a lot of pressure on myself, but I'm hoping that these will be edited out, all uploaded in your inbox before 12:30. Hopefully a little bit earlier in the morning, maybe around 10 a.m. Eastern. We'll see. Now, this is a busy day. Got all these rankings done. Got all the rankings on the Patreon, patreon.com/Ron Stewart. It'll have my full ranking, super flex, or flex is in like running back against wide receiver. All of my rankings, PPR, 0.5 PPR, standard, all that good stuff, all across the board will be on the Patreon. I'm going to be grinding that tonight before Thanksgiving so everybody has their rankings for the morning tomorrow. Now, as always, make sure you go down below, subscribe, leave a like. We cover fantasy football on this channel every single day. Let's go.
Thirsty, trying to choose. I know I'm pretty cool. My nitty bag.
All right. Now we are in the tier list. The tier matrix, if you will. Now, first up in S tier, as always, we have Cooper Kupp. The modern day Larry Bird himself. He is balling. And I'm kind of shocked by this game. I talked about this in the last video, but the Rams versus the Green Bay Packers. It is only like a 40, I think it's like somewhere in like the 45 to 48 over under range. For me, when I saw this game on the sheet, I thought it would have been like 53.5. A high scoring game between the Packers and the Rams, Stafford versus Aaron Rodgers. Responsibly, I'm saying maybe go out there, put a couple dollars on the over in this game. I do think that they're going to be it's going to be a high scoring game. It kind of reminds me of that duel between, Justin Jefferson and Davante Adams last week. I think we're going to see Cooper Kupp against Davante Adams just kind of go blow for blow, go crazy. On top of that, man, just a wild stat. Cooper Kupp is averaging 25.9 points per game at this point in PPR leagues. That is highest among all players, including quarterbacks. He's insane. He's out of his mind. And the guy I'll put next to him, the only other guy that deserves to be an S tier is Davante Adams, another guy who sees insane volume. He put up 30.5 points last week in that duel against Justin Jefferson. He is going to be at home against the Rams. Kupp versus Davante Adams. I think they're going to have another one of those kind of duels where they just go, bucket for bucket, kind of like how Davante Adams and Justin Jefferson did last week. So I'm excited for that matchup. I think they are no-brainer, S-tier wide receivers. Now moving on to A tier. These guys are still studs. But I think that Kupp and Davante Adams are on a different tier, just a tier of their own at this point. And we're going to have Stephon Diggs here at the top of A tier. He's my wide receiver 3 this week. Now, did he only have 23 yards last week? Yes, but he did have 2 touchdowns. He's getting a matchup this week against New Orleans in New Orleans. Personally, I'm not really super scared of Marcus Lattimore. This is a team that's allowing the third most fantasy points per game to opposing wide receivers. So I think he should be just fine. I actually like this matchup a lot for Stephon Diggs. I like this whole Bills team to kind of bounce back. I wouldn't be shocked at all, fellas, if the Bills came out and just absolutely ran over the Saints. It was kind of just a statement game after, they've kind of been on a skid recently where they've been losing here and there. I don't hate the idea that they could come out here absolutely dominate. Now, at wide receiver 4, we have Deebo Samuel, who's going to be at home against the Vikings. And he had a weird week last week because with Elijah Mitchell gone, he kind of became a running back. He saw more rush attempts than targets. He only saw 10% of his team's targets, despite having like a 30% target share before that. Now, I will say it's not ideally, you want targets because targets are further downfield. There's more implied points from targets, but Deebo Samuel is shown to be a monster regardless of how they utilize him. They will manufacture him 10 touches at minimum. The Vikings allowed the 5th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. If you want to put Deebo in that S tier, I really wouldn't even blame you. I think Deebo Samuel is a bona fide top 5 wide receiver rest of season at this point. Now, the next guy we're going to put in is in that same conversation, Justin Jefferson. He is the wide receiver 5 on the season in points per game. And the Vikings keep playing these shootout games, which is surprising because when you think about like Kirk Cousins and Mike Zimmer, you don't think of, fireworks. But they've been having these close shootouts. They've had in their last like 5 games, they've had 2 games that finished 31-34. They had a game that finished 34-28. They've had a bunch of games where they end up in shootouts where one side goes over 30 points. And the 49ers aren't a great matchup, but this does feel like one of those games where they could go, toe for toe, Deebo Samuel versus Justin Jefferson, and kind of, put on a show, put on some fireworks. So I don't hate that either. By the way, the over in the Vikings game and the over in the Packers game, like both of them. I like both of them. Now, we could see this. We could look back on this in a couple of days and be like, all right, you're an idiot, Ron, but those are just my thoughts, just from kind of observing where the over-unders are at and kind of getting a feel for the game scripts. Now, in B tier, a guy who's been kind of sliding down, like this is probably his last week where he'll be this high if he doesn't do anything this week. He hasn't finished in the top 24 in 3 weeks. Ja'Marr Chase. He's going to be at home against Pittsburgh. And it's time to start worrying ever so slightly, but I do love this matchup, right? This is a get-right game for the Bengals, or not a get-right game for the Bengals, but a get-right game for Ja'Marr Chase. I think this is a prove-it game for the Bengals, where they're going to be at home against the Steelers. If they are really on like top dogs in the AFC North, like they believe they are, then a home game against the Steelers team should be not light work, but this should be a game that they win, right? If they want to be contenders in the AFC or, kind of be a little bit frisky, this is a game that they should win. Pittsburgh is 26th in pass DVOA, so I do believe that one of Ja'Marr Chase, Tyler Boyd, or T. Higgins will be great plays this week. It's just a matter of figuring out which one it is. Ja'Marr Chase has the best chance. Now, in this same tier, these guys are all kind of mid-range wide receiver ones. We have DK Metcalf. And DK Metcalf has been disappointing since, Russell Wilson has come back. He saw 30% target share last week, but he finished outside the top 50 wide receivers. Now, the core thing is that he saw 30% of the targets. He's still, Russell Wilson's number one option, and now he's going to be on the road in Washington. I'm not panicking. Washington allows the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. This feels like a lock for DK Metcalf to have this get-right game where he just goes crazy, does his thing this week. I'm a big fan of what DK Metcalf, kind of brings to the table in Week 12. Now, we have two wide receivers here. I call it lazy to bundle them together, but they're in the same game. I have them back-to-back in the rankings. I like both of the Tampa Bay wide receivers this week because Antonio Brown most likely isn't playing, and Chris Godwin and Mike Evans are, they both do their thing. Like Chris Godwin gets a ton of targets, Mike Evans gets the red zone looks, and Indianapolis is an interesting matchup where they're going to be in Indy, and the Colts are a pass funnel defense where they are the 20th best pass defense and the second best run defense. So they discourage you from running the ball. I think they're probably going to shy away from Leonard Fournette in this game and kind of rely on their receivers if they want to win it. So that's why I like them both as top 10 plays. Then our last wide receiver in this tier is Keenan Allen, who's just been a monster. He's just been an absolute monster like the past, couple of weeks. I'm trying to find him on this thing. There he is. You can spot that bald head from a mile away. Love Keenan Allen. Hold on. I feel like I can kind of stretch my screen out a little bit more. Maybe give you guys a little bit more of a nice little view of what I got going on here. Now we're talking. I don't think that might screw me over in a little bit, but we'll see. We'll see how it goes. All right. So where was I? Keenan Allen. He's going to be in Denver. He's my wide receiver 10 this week. He now has 3 straight games with 30% or better of the targets on a team that throws the ball a ton. So the volume is there. He's crazy. He gets a lot of volume. He hasn't even been super efficient this year. He's like, I want to say he's like top 7 or 8 in expected points per game, but like maybe around wide receiver 10 in points per game. So the efficiency should catch up to him because we know he's a good wide receiver, and he's going to be in Denver. Denver allows the 10th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Keenan Allen's a smash. Now moving on, we have the C tier, and these guys are just kind of firm, top 15 guys for me. And I like Deontay Johnson. Deontay Johnson doesn't have, a great matchup. He's going to be playing in Cincinnati. They're not very kind to opposing wide receivers, but he's the wide receiver 5 in expected points per game, which means in terms of volume, he is a top 5 wide receiver in earning volume. So the volume is there. He's a really high floor guy. You just have to kind of rely on it. The volume is there for him. Now, a guy that's a little bit of a tougher eval, I think if he wasn't hurt, he'd probably be in B tier. And CeeDee Lamb, who's going to be at home against Las Vegas. Now, just saying, a guy who had a concussion on Sunday, I don't believe it should be possible for him to play on Thursday. Just looking out for the guy's health, I don't think, it's not worth the long-term effects of, CTE and stuff. But it seems like he is doing, everything that he can to bypass the concussion protocol. I believe that he hasn't even finished the final step, and he went out there and practiced today, which is just, I don't know. It doesn't sit right with me, But if he plays, he will play. A concussion isn't the same as like an ankle injury or hamstring injury. It probably won't flare up in the game. So, there's a slight risk of re-injury, but it's not the same as something like that or like a rib or anything like that because it's a concussion. As long as he doesn't get smacked, which if you get smacked hard enough to the point where you re-injure a concussion, you probably would have had a concussion regardless, right? So the re-injury is pretty low. Still gonna ding him a little bit here at wide receiver 12, but again, just kind of keep an eye out. See if he plays against the Raiders. Without Amari, CeeDee Lamb should pretty much smash in this spot. Then we have Terry McLaurin in this tier as well. And McLaurin is going to be playing in a really soft matchup. The Seahawks are the 8th worst pass defense in DVOA. They're giving Terry McLaurin on PFF the highest matchup advantage of the week, giving him a 100 out of 100 against these opposing corners. He should absolutely dog these boys. He is the wide receiver 9. Why did I write wide receiver 9 on 20? Oh, he was the wide receiver 9 last week on 21.3 points. Sorry to break the fourth wall there for a second and reference the outline, but was a bit confused where I was getting at. But yeah, he was the wide receiver 9 last week, has a really soft week again where he should, go off. Now, another wide receiver who is going to be playing against Terry McLaurin in that same game is Tyler Lockett. This one also has some sneaky shootout potential. Taylor Heineke sometimes can throw it a little bit. We'll see what Russell Wilson can do. I do believe that this Washington game feels like a layup for Russ. Just a game where he can kind of bounce back. I think that if Russ is playing at the top of his game, I don't think that Washington's really a threat to beat them. It really just comes down to Russ, being back to full health. This is week 12 now when he was supposed to come back from that finger injury. So hopefully that he's pretty much, healed at this point. Washington's allowing the most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. This should be a Lockett or a DK Metcalf game. One of them should, go crazy. Now, moving on, we have another guy where these guys are all kind of falling in the same spot where they're all kind of like boom or bust wide receiver 2s. And of course, as expected, I made this too big. But I like DJ Moore because I do believe that Cam Newton's really reviving this offense. We talked about it. Cam Newton, in terms of throwing the ball, isn't that bad. Now, he didn't have a ton of throwing yards. I want to say he had under 200 passing yards last week, which is tough for his wide receivers. Now, I think that that's going to ramp up over time, and he's just allowing them to score more often. He's moving the ball better, and this was DJ Moore's first top 20 finish in a while, in a few weeks. Last week, I want to say he had like 50 yards and a touchdown against Washington. Now, they're going to come out here. They're playing in Miami. Miami's allowing the second most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, so I do like DJ Moore to come out here and, kind of get right. I think he's due for kind of a boom week here eventually. Then another guy who could also have a boom week, we talked about it earlier, this, San Francisco versus the Vikings. I kind of like the Vikings to encourage a shootout here. They play a style that kind of encourages that with, big plays. And Adam Thielen was the wide receiver 7 last week after Justin Jefferson was also the wide receiver 1. So there's enough to go around for everybody in a high-scoring game. I like Adam Thielen this week to kind of round out that tier. Now, moving on, we have our wide receiver 17, which is going to be headlined by the man, the myth, the legend, Michael Pittman Jr. And this is, I'm putting some respect on his name, wide receiver 17. Now, he's actually been, kind of disappointing recently. He has 2 weeks outside of the top 24 in a row. But when you look at the names on the list, it gets ugly. We don't even have a ton of buys. It's just it's getting ugly in these streets for some reason, right? After wide receiver 16, there's really not anybody else that makes a ton of sense to put here besides Michael Pittman. And he's been really efficient. This is a tough matchup against Tampa Bay. They're allowing, I think they're like 7th in pass defense DVOA, so they are a very tough matchup. But I think he's due for a blow up game soon, right? If Tampa Bay shuts down the run and they have to rely on the pass a little bit, I do like Pittman to score a touchdown, maybe even 2. So we'll see how that goes. And then another guy in this tier where this is kind of where the tier goes to shit a little bit, where, I don't love the way things look. And what I mean by that is A.J. Brown. With A.J. Brown, I get kind of this weird sense of, I don't really know what's going on with the injury. That's kind of what bothers me. The injury is tough because he bruised a rib where you can put a flak jacket on it, but still it hurts to breathe. Somebody can, just come across the middle and kill you. I lean the idea that he probably doesn't play. I think that he probably doesn't play. He gets a bye week and then he comes back. That would be best case scenario. But I'm putting him here in case if he does play because, at a certain point you have to rank him somewhere. I have him wide receiver 18. I wouldn't play him over anybody ranked ahead of him. He is a really high risk to re-injure his ribs. He's also playing against the Patriots in New England. I think that if New England's going to do anything against a team they have no studs. Julio's out. Derrick Henry's out. It is literally A.J. Brown is their only playmaker. They're going to just single in on him, take him out of the game the same way they did to Kyle Pitts. So A.J. Brown, very tough play, in my opinion, this week. Now, moving on, we have Michael Gallup in this tier. And even with, CeeDee Lamb playing, I still like Gallup as a top 20 play because, they pass the ball enough. They score enough for them to support both wide receivers, similar to CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper. And with Michael Gallup, they're going to be playing at home against Las Vegas. Las Vegas is 23rd in pass defense DVOA, And Michael Gallup just saw 10 targets. He should be fed again. Now, I don't think that he's going – if CeeDee Lamb plays, he's not going to get he's not going to be the target leader, but he will still be the secondary target guy, just like Amari Cooper, hover around 20% target share, and that should be enough in this offense as long as, he gets lucky on like a deep ball, which is kind of what you're praying for with a lot of these wide receivers. Then moving on, wide receiver 20, the last wide receiver in this tier, is a guy I'm actually pretty excited about. I really like Brandon Cooks this week. And I know that Cooks, he only saw like a 15% target share last week, which is bad given the fact that he's been hovering around like that 28% range all season long. Here's the thing. I'm just chalking it up as, it's an off week. It happens every once in a while, whatever. There was a weird game where they beat the Titans. They ran the ball like 30-something times to Rex Burkhead and David Johnson. But if Brandon Cooks and Tyrod Taylor can kind of get on the same page here, they're going to be playing the Jets, who are only giving up like the 9th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. But I think that's misleading because they suck at pass defense. It's just that teams that play the Jets, unless if you are the Titans or the Bengals, you get a huge lead and then you just run the ball. So you don't really have time to stack up those wide receiver points, but they're actually last in pass DVOA. So they are the worst pass defense in the league. And in this game, because I think it's going to be close, the Texans and the Jets, it's not going to be a blowout. I think that's when you're going to see monster fantasy points at the wide receiver position. So Brandon Cooks is actually a sneaky, I would have him as like a must start this week. Now, this is the F tier or E tier. I wrote down F tier. I thought that I had more than this many tiers, but I hate this tiers, guys. I hate this tier. You can put like 10 different guys in here. Guys that aren't going to be listed in this tier that I wouldn't hate if you put them there would be like Elijah Moore. If you want to put Darnell Mooney in here, I don't care. But these are the guys I went with. And first up, we have T. Higgins. He's going to be playing at home against Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is the 26th best defense in pass DVOA. Not good. And I know the production hasn't been there for T. Higgins, but he hasn't scored a touchdown since week 2. The touchdowns will come. The production will come. I still do believe T. Higgins is a great player. If, he has another really, really disappointing week here, then okay, we're done putting him in the top 24. But for now, I don't see any better wide receivers that I'd rather take a swing on than T. Higgins. They also pass the ball a ton. Now, then we have Mike Williams, another guy I don't love. He has hovered around the 14 to 16% target share range each of the last 3 weeks. The volume isn't there. Again, had a hard time. I hate this tier. I had a really hard time picking this tier. He's going to be playing in Denver. Denver is pretty soft against wide receivers, but the volume isn't going to be there for Mike Williams. When you start Mike Williams, you are just praying for a long touchdown like we saw last week. Then we have Devonta Smith, who's going to be in New York against the Giants. And Devonta Smith is actually a really strong play. I just need to see a little bit more until I put him in like the top of E tier or D tier, but he has seen 27 to 38% of the targets in Philadelphia the last 3 weeks. So he's getting a lot of targets, and the Giants are giving up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. So that's a really, really juicy matchup there. I like him this week. Then our last wide receiver is another rookie, Jalen Waddle, who actually has a tough matchup. He's going to be in Carolina. Carolina is giving up the second least fantasy points to opposing wide receivers, so nothing great, but the volume has been there. He has seen 28% of the targets last week. He had a 20-point game. Jalen Waddle has just been really good in fantasy. I think that he's kind of earned his way into the top 24 every week as a guy that can kind of, make his way to 20 points in a given week. Now that's going to do it for today, fellas. As always, make sure you get down below, subscribe, leave a like. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you have a happy Thanksgiving. Also, don't forget underdogfantasy.com. If you use my promo code Ron when you deposit, it'll be in the description, it'll be down below in the comments. But you hop on the Underdog Fantasy. I'm telling you guys, if you're out there, you're bored on Thanksgiving, they have some really, really cool tournaments on Thanksgiving where you can get in on, I think you can get in on all 3 of the games. You can get on individual ones for like $10 entry tournament where you could do like $10 and a bunch of money goes to the top, hop in a draft or whatever. And if you use my promo code Ron when you deposit, the link, to the app, to whatever, it'll be in the description, it'll be down below in the comments. But you use my promo code Ron. However much money you put in, they'll match. So if you put in $50, they'll match $50. You put in $75, they'll match $75. You put in $10, they'll match $10, all the way up to $100. So make sure you check that out. I don't know how much longer they're going to have that promo out for, but something that I'm going to be doing on Thanksgiving Day is getting in a bunch of those tournaments to try and, finesse my way in there. I know a guy in the Discord, in our Discord, Derek, has made thousands of dollars doing these weekly contests that Underdog has. So make sure you check those out. As always, I love you guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
I got the juice, I got the juice.
10 Chatham's on. Foolies glad I'm home. Even my haters kinda glad I'm on. Rest in peace to my vagabond. Rapper, song, singer, suspended, subpoena from Mr.